Hello, welcome back to another video lecture on basic algebra. Today we're going to be talking about solving basic nonlinear equations. So first let's kind of discuss the difference between a linear equation and a nonlinear equation so we can see what we're looking at. So linear equations form straight lines and always have a degree of 1. And nonlinear equations don't form straight lines and always have a degree that's not equal to 1. So a few examples I have here. So linear equations would be something like x equals 4. So the exponent here is going to be 1. Or 2x plus 3 equals 7. This is still a linear equation because we don't have any exponent other than 1. Here we have nonlinear equations. So 1 over x equals 1. Here, technically the exponent on here would be negative 1. Here we have x squared equals 4, the exponent's 2. Here we have the square root of x equals 3, and the exponent on this would be 1/2. So most of the equations that we're going to be working on today are going to be of these forms here. Something like 1 over x equals a constant, or x squared equals 4, or a constant, or square root of x equals some constant. So let's kind of talk about the basics of solving these and the ideas behind it. So if we have something like x squared equals 4, to solve this, we kind of look at what operation's being done on x. So here, we're squaring x. So to get x by itself, we have to undo this square. So we actually square root both sides. So the square root of x squared gives us x, and this is the same thing as the square root of 4. So we get that x is going to be either 2 or negative 2. And the reason why we say 2 or negative 2 is because if we square negative 2, we still get 4. So this is usually shorthand written as x equals plus or minus 2. So let's look at this one. We have 1 over x equals 3. For this, we're going to multiply, pretty much cross multiply in a way. You can kind of consider it like this. We cross multiply, and we're going to get 1 times 1 equals 3x. Then we just simply solve this as a linear equation. All we got to do at this point is divide both sides by 3, and we get x equals 1/3. And that's how we solve those. Now, to solve something like the square root of x equals a number, so suppose that we looked at something like that. Square root of x equals 3. Let's go ahead and solve that. To this one, all we got to do is undo that square root. So we simply square both sides. So we square this and we square this, and we'll get that x equals 9. So remember that the square root and the square will cancel here, and here, even if the square is underneath the square root, those two things still cancel. So let's work out a few examples. I've got some examples here. Here we've got the square root of x equals 9. And so all we do is we square both sides, and we end up with x equals 81. So here we have 1 over x equals 10. So if we multiply across, multiply both sides, we can go ahead and do it like this to make it easy to remember. We'll get 1 equals 10x. Then we divide both sides by 10, and we get x equals 1 over 10. So let's look here. We've got t squared equals 100. So to solve this, we just square root both sides. So this gives us that t equals 10. The square root of 100 is 10. So our last example here is actually a little more interesting. I have 1 over x equals 1 over 4. Now this is still technically the same thing, the same sort of idea as this, because 10 is a constant, and so is 1 over 4. Still just a constant. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cross multiply, like we were doing before. And this tells us that x equals 4. So let's look at a few more examples that are a little more complicated. Here I've got some more complicated examples. First we've got the square root of 2x equals 3. So we're going to square both sides. And this tells us that 2x equals 9. So then what we do is we divide out that 2 from both sides. And this tells us that x is 9 over 2, or if you wanted to do it as a decimal, 4.5. Here I've done something similar. We have 1 over 2x equals 4. So let's go ahead and cross multiply. And so we've got 1 equals, and then 2x times 4 gives us 8x. So then what we're going to do is we're going to divide out our 8 from both sides. And this tells us that x equals 1 over 8. Because these 8's cancel. So looking at this one, we've got x squared minus 3 equals 6. So this one's not so hard. All we're going to do is add 3 to both sides, and it makes it look like this. X squared equals 9. Then we simply square root both sides. And once we square root both sides, we get that x equals plus or minus 3. Our last problem that we're going to do is 1 over x equals x over 16. So this one's a little bit different than what we were doing before, but we can make it look like something that we've done before. So first we're going to cross multiply. And this tells us when we multiply here, we get x squared. When we multiply here, we get 16. This tells us x squared equals 16. This is something that we know how to work with. All we do is we square root both sides, and we get x is going to be plus or minus 4. So those are the basics of solving nonlinear equations. I hope that this video lecture has helped with your understanding of a little bit about nonlinear equations and how to work with them. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next. Goodbye.